Welcome to Marketing Rebels Breaking Business Barriers. You've joined us for a special series called Marketing Momentum for Mental Health. And we have Anja here today, and she's going to tell us a little bit about herself, why this topic matters to her, and why it should matter to you. Anja, welcome to the show again.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. So, for those who don't know me, I'm Anja. I work with strategy and everything around like how to connect strategy to make it more fun. But I'm also a big fan of like how to do that to function the best way possible as entrepreneurs and therefore mental health. I think as, entrepreneurs or even as humans, there's a lot of things that are needs to be intertwined in our life for us to work, but as entrepreneurs there's even more because we have uncertainty and pressure of doing different things and maybe different levels of stress than if you were to have another type of job. And so having a strong or mental health, I don't know if you can say strong mental health in English, but having a strong mental health, I think is really important. Having good mental fitness, I'm going to use that word, mental fitness, I
Love
think
that.
is crucial for entrepreneurs to not just succeed in their business, but in their life, to have a balanced life.
That's perfect. And actually, I don't think people have I heard strong mental health? Sure. I think I've heard that. And I think that just thematically, it definitely makes sense. More often, I would say that I've heard resilience,
Yeah.
mental health resilience, right? I think that's reasonably synonymous with having strong mental health. And what I love about that is that implication that you can work at it.
Mm,
You
yeah.
can build it. Previous to press and play here, what we're talking about going to a personal trainer and building your muscles. You're a personal trainer yourself, and I know that my muscles are hurting today.
Yeah.
But I also know that they're building, they're stronger. Every day I can feel myself like having a bit more pep in my step. And so what we're saying here is that you can do the same thing with your mental health.
Yes. And I think that's why I love the word mental fitness so well, like with mental health, because it is it's a skill set. It's not something that you just, some are born with it and some are not. I think some pick it up more in their childhood, like some are just more taught as they grow up, either by family or friends or, with school or the right teacher, like some of that is random, but I think all of us can be taught resilience or strong mental health, and I think it enhances in terms of, I think in the online industry we talk a lot about, mindset, but I think mental health is a type of mindset too, but we need to differentiate them a little bit because mental health is something that is, I would say, more profound on like the whole body, but mindset is how you think. But there's also clinical things within, mental health that are clinically different brain things that you can't really do anything about, that you might need medication for. And, like we need to have, what is it called? Like,
You need to differentiate the two,
thank you.
but acknowledge that they are partners.
Yes.
I would say, and this is just me kind of spitballing, ideating, mindset and
Mm,
establishing, working through your any sort of mindset stuff that we hear a lot of coaches talk about, because remember everyone, mindset work. It's a buzzword right now. It's founded in neuroscience. It
yes.
really has to do with the connectivity in your brain, all of the neurotransmitters, the chemicals, things that are going on in your brain. It's very much brain body hard science
Yeah.
with a fluffy word called mindset, but it very much is hard science. So mindset is more of the preventative measures. How
Hmm.
can we maintain what we have, create a solid foundation for growth? Mental health, when you have mental health, when your mental and emotional space is healthy,
Mm,
um, that's great. We want that. You can maintain that better with a good mindset. there are going to be additional layers, variables that can impact your mental health, both clinical and circumstantial.
Mm-hmm.
But having that mindset, having that ability to really establish resilience as an underlying layer or foundation will
Yeah.
support you through the inevitable downtimes that exist within the structure of your mental health. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's exactly what I was trying to say, just
Yeah.
better words.
Yeah, I feel like this is where Anja and I, we're gonna get together and we're gonna actually like you implanted the idea. I blew it up with way too many words. Way too many words. And now we're gonna have
It's
to hunker down and copyright the ish out of that thing to make it concise because that was wordy. But I think we've got the message.
yes. And I think like that's where it's at, like I'm a big believer like we are responsible for our own lives, which talks about resilience, right? So like when bad things happen or when things are not working the way that we want, a lot of things like the variables that you're talking about might push us back. Like I had a time in my life where I was really sick. Like I was very sick and I was trying to get back on my feet while people didn't believe that I could do the things that I wanted to do because I was too sick to do that physically and mentally. But then I think because of the decision and the moving and the resilience in deciding, well, that's what I want to do, brought me into a space of like, even if sometimes it went a bit overboard, and so the balance of my life was off, right? So I had to take a break and do a little breather and rest before I could continue. It still allowed me to come way past what others believed I could ever achieve, and what they thought my life would look like at this point. And I think that's where people kind of miss out, like how much your decision and your like what you decide on what you can do has an impact on the rest of your mindset, or the rest of your mental health too. Because if you allow yourself to constantly, it's kind of like the way that I usually look at it is like when when you've never done a squat, like you've never done a squat, you're probably going to be very stiff. You're not going to be able to go very far down. Your feet are going to be wobbly. You're going to struggle with balance, and it's going to be hard keeping the weight on your shoulders and so forth, right? But the more you do it, what you're actually doing is not just building muscle, but you're teaching your body to send the right messages from your brain through the neurons into your muscles to act in the way that your body is. And then your muscles are working on making you more mobile and more flexible to adapt to the situation. So mental health is kind of the same, right? When you decide on, okay, I want to do this in this way, or I want to live my life a certain way, and you're kind of doing the hard work, maybe not as fast as you want to because you're not able to for some reason, like a variable, like either some sickness or whatever that might be for you, you're still able to move forward, and you're still teaching your brain. You're kind of paving the way. You're changing the highway to go from, okay, I'm going to go 80 miles per hour this way, to starting to build like a dirt road, to then put up like the pavement and then put up the lights. Like you're kind of slowly building and slowly moving the traffic over to that space. And that doesn't happen all overnight. That's like a slow progress. But when you're doing it, you're also going to start seeing change in what's happening, not just in your mindset, but in like how it affects your mental health in other areas too, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And there are a few things that I want to pull from that. One thing that you said right early on is taking responsibility for I think you said taking responsibility for the things around you, your circumstances. Now, I just want to clarify because I know you and I know kind of where you're coming from. We're not saying like You don't need to take fault for the things that are happening around you, but rather take responsibility for how you respond to them.
Yes. Yes,
It
that's
is
what
not
I
your responsibility. It's not your fault that you become sick, or that you've fallen out of shape, or that you've burnt out. It's not your fault. There's no, I actually recently had a conversation with my family about this. No finger pointing allowed, because that
mm,
doesn't help anybody. There's no fault, because as soon as you start getting to the blame game, nobody wins. What we're going to do is we're going to take responsibility for the circumstances that are around us by making better choices moving forward.
yes.
Informed, aligned, intentional choices moving forward. And so if you notice, hey, you know what, I noticed that I personally, I would get so caught up in things, hyper fixate on it, and be like, I want to do the thing. I want to do the, yes, we're going to do the thing. And then I burn out. Now
Yeah.
this doesn't happen very often anymore, knock on wood, but
Mm,
it happened pretty frequently, especially in the beginning of my journey as an entrepreneur, because I got so
mm,
excited. And
yeah.
so over time, I was able to work out, how can I take responsibility for my own mental health? And what did that look like? Simplify,
Mm,
pare things down to the basics. I
yeah.
love the concept of the one thing. I
Mm,
love the concept of 90-day or 12-week planning, because then you are able to really divide things out and reverse engineer what's going on around you. When it comes to
mm.
your mental health, acknowledging and accepting the fact that you've only got so many spoons, so to speak, those proverbial spoons. Um, Knowing that, and then just saying, okay, I think I'm going to celebrate the fact that I had a shower today and I
Mm,
responded to 5 emails, instead of kicking myself for it, because I know that if I rest today, I'll have way more spoons tomorrow. And then I'll
yeah.
be able to hop on those calls. I'll be able to serve my clients or complete that project.
Yes. And I think that's something that we don't like, you don't see that a lot in the online space. Like we don't see people taking responsibility for showing up how they need to show up for themselves, not what they feel like is expected from everything they see around them, because there's a big difference, right? So like sometimes, like I remember having this conversation with one of my dear friends, she's also an entrepreneur, and I was, because I've been working on this project with like this big strategy thing. So like my brain was like on fire, go, go, go. And she was not in that space. So we were kind of on opposites end. Like my brain was like, yes, I'm gonna do this. Like I was in high energy that day, like getting things done. And she was just like, I feel like so drained, like maybe I shouldn't talk to you because
Mm.
you will be smitten by me. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
No. Like, what are you talking about? Like, everyone has different days and different seasons. Like, you don't have to feel bad because I'm being productive today and you need to rest. Like, what did you do yesterday? And then we talked and she was like, well, I did all these things yesterday. And I was like, well, yesterday I watched a whole season of FBI. And so, like, and so she was like, wait, you did? And I was like, yeah. So therefore I have more energy today and you have less energy today. Like, it doesn't always have to be equal. And balance doesn't have to look similar. Like, with a lot of like my clients, like they ask like, well, how do you plan out your, how do you do that, how do you stay on top of everything? And a lot of times I can show them, but I don't do it very often, because usually that's after we work together for like at least half a year to or longer,
Yeah.
because I want them to find their way first, because it's so important to find out how you need to be balanced. Like, how much free time do you need? Do you have kids that you need to take care of and
Mm-hmm.
be present with? Like, I don't have kids, so like that doesn't take time out of my day. Like, that is a huge responsibility that I don't have, like, and then other people want to wake up at 5. I cannot wake up at 5. And so like
It's a
there's,
hard pass for me too.
variations. Yeah, right. So there's variations of like, are you a morning person or are you an like evening person? And allowing yourself the same grace to show up as yourself, Because I think when mental health or illnesses happen, it's when we've operated outside of our operating system. I don't know if
Right.
you've gotten this, but on my computer, I'm not a big fan of Windows 11. I have a computer, not a Mac, but I am not a big fan of Windows 11. Probably shouldn't say that too loud in case like the robots take over or whatever. But I just like the outlay, like the UX outlay of Windows 10. So
Right.
I was very slow in adapting. But at one point, my computer was like, if you don't upgrade, it won't function very well. Like it's going to be much slower. And I think that's because everything, like all the things that you're using every day, is now operating on another system than you are on. And so
Right.
you're then not, you're kind of like the odd wheel out. So you're not working with the flow, you're working almost against the flow,
Hmm.
if that makes sense.
It
And
does. It absolutely does. And it's so often that we get caught up in that. Just the concept of, well, they're doing it. You start playing that comparison game. They are
yes.
not you. I've preached this and preached this over and over again. I used to shout about when I was just doing conversion copywriting. I would
Mm,
say, stop doing copycat copy. They're not
mm,
you. You're not them. It's not going to work the same way. It may be similar, maybe, but for how
yeah,
long? How long can you maintain this facade before something inevitably goes wrong? And you have
yeah,
no one to look to but yourself to take responsibility for that and make the necessary choices to work more in alignment with what's going on. That means that if you've taken on too much, start taking on less.
yeah,
If you know that your flow, this is something that we've talked about in other conversations as well. If you know that your rhythm is such that in the wintertime, your energy is really low. This is normal, by the way. This is
mm,
totally normal. Your energy dips in the wintertime. Maybe don't do so much. Maybe if you're a woman and in your monthly cycles, you have ebbs and flows in your energy, which is normal, work
yeah,
with it, not against it.
yeah,
Lean into the restful stages and then friggin' amp up when you're in the amp up stages, right? And let it be okay.
yeah.
Accept that, embrace that.
And I think we don't talk about too much because we're putting a lot of pressure. I
Mhm.
know for me, like I think I did a workshop because I both me and my husband, we are very high achievers. And so a lot of time we both are like we want to achieve so much that we forget both like, okay, well, how can we be spending time together? Because we're tired, when we're done,
Right?
we're just too tired to want to spend time together because we're just like, well, let's watch TV, like let's just get off, or let's
That's
just
it.
make some fun food, or and we've had like we do fun things, we travel a lot, like we do a lot of things that people are like, but you do so much. Yes, we do so much because we don't have kids and we're able to do that. But then most of our days we're actually quite tired, or at least I am, when we're working full time, or at least when I was studying 100% and working full time
Right.
in my business. So I was 200% almost for almost 3 years doing that. And I think going from that like space of like, okay, I need to perform for at least like 16 hours a day, like that's a lot of time where you have to be on and perform and do well, and also wanting to do your best and wanting to please everyone, like that shifts a lot of your attention from not necessarily being the best. And I think
Yeah.
that's what creates that burnout that we're talking about. And one of the things that I realize is very often if you start if you're like taking the blaming, like you call it the
Finger
pointing the
pointing or the blame
finger pointing,
game. Yeah.
blaming game off the table, and you're just being curious, you can also find your biggest strength in your biggest weaknesses. So for example, for us, we like people pleasers usually want to connect with a lot of peoples and want really deep, meaningful relationship. But then when we go overboard, we begin to please everyone because we want to be liked, because we're
Right.
not feeling. So it's like figuring out like where your triggers are can sometime actually help you create balance, because you're being aware of, okay, where am I actually, where's the strength actually tipping over to being more of a weakness, or where the achiever becomes more of a controller because you need to get your whole to-do list done
Mhm.
in that
Yeah.
one day, instead of like giving yourself grace, or like scheduling them out throughout the week, or sortating them on what's actually really important for the goal that you're like going to achieve that day. Like
Yeah.
there's so many things that you can do, but being aware of that, I think there's a fine line between when it's a strength and when it kind of tips over to when the balance is off. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like there's
absolutely. Well, because you see all sorts of people in the past, being a perfectionist was a badge of honor, but now you see a lot of people saying, I'm a recovering perfectionist, because it has tipped the scales. Now it's become a problem, and it's actually an obstacle in my way that's preventing me from achieving my goals. Now,
yeah.
I just want to rewind the clock a little bit, because you mentioned something that I haven't quite dove into yet, and that is the relationship aspect of things.
Mm,
Right? Because a lot of people forget almost, and I know that sounds bad, but it's true. We just, there's actually a song Andy Grammer sings called Fresh Eyes. And he says something like, it's just normal that the things that are in your world all the time, you just get used to it, and it becomes not as fancy, and doesn't catch your eye as much until,
yeah.
until in this case, it walks in a black dress with a slit up the side, and then you're like, oh, fresh eyes, I
Yeah.
forgot that I was supposed to be paying attention to this. And I think this is really important, because you get caught up in
Mhm.
getting your degree, in getting your business off the ground, and making those connections, and doing all the things, and then you forget about the things that bring you joy, like your
Yeah.
relationship, or your hobbies, your
Yeah.
children, if you have them, your pets, anything, all those things. And it becomes the opposite of what we just described about the something possibly positive over, like, tipping over into something negative. It becomes almost the opposite, because people often think, well, but if I focus on making a date with my significant other, or if I take my every evening off to play with my kids, or any of those things, well, I'm going to get behind. Oh my goodness. Well, the fact of the matter is, and I mean, I can't give you the citations, but I know the studies exist whereby,
Mm.
if you take that time to paint the picture, to go for the walk, to snuggle, right?
Yeah.
The little everyday things, not the big trips you just described, Anja, that your friends
Yeah.
have noticed, those little everyday things. You're going to have more energy. You're going to have more focus, more intention, more passion to do the things that you feel like are needs, to do the things that have got to get done. So it seems counterintuitive that to take that time away would be more productive, but it's true.
Yeah. And I think it's because we forget, like, I think we just so often we need to categorize things. So
Right.
we're like, well, work is important because it gives me this feeling of worth, or this money, or whatever it is, passion, or, and then so you put that into this box, and then you're like, well, I want this, and this, I like this too, but if I have more of this, I can also have more of this. So therefore, I need to focus here to get the other things. But then a lot of times, or actually a lot of studies show that when we are with a community, or like, I like when I stopped studying, because I was finished studying last summer, I was like, what the heck do I do with, like, I
Yeah.
had so much time on my hands that I was like, how I didn't want to fill it with work. So I was like, what am I gonna do with the time? Like, there's a lot more time in my day. Like, what am I gonna do with that?
Yeah.
And so I think figuring out, like, well, what are some things that excites you, and testing them out. Because if you've been in like a working kind of mentality, even if you're very passionate about it, I think having room to be creative and playful and not having to get paid for it allows our brain to be more intuitive and be more in a space where it can kind of relax in a different way, and it kind of overlaps with what you're doing. So by doing that, you are actually able to do your work faster. Usually you're able to concentrate and be more micromanaged when you do work. So by having more free time, a lot of times you're able to be more focused and get more things done. Not that you should do that to get more things done, but you get what you need to get done faster so that you can have more time, right?
That's
And
right.
so I thought that was very interesting. And I
I just want
remember,
to tap into something though, Anja, because this is really cool. Because what you're just describing, um, it also like the fun part of it becomes a habit. And what's
yes,
cool about that, especially for you, I feel like, is that then that habit of playfulness, curiosity, and fun seeps into those to-dos, your business, right? Your
yes,
studies, all of that jazz. So you're then able to make work fun,
yeah,
which is crazy because that's not only good for you, like as in on a personal level, good for you. It's good for you on a professional level because that actually really helps you to connect with your audience, to build a community, to actually establish yourself in a way that makes you irresistible because you're cool. People want to hang out with the cool. You're fun. You're a good time. I want to be with you. And you can't get there if you're not feeding yourself that fun on your own terms as well.
yeah. And I think, very often we think, or at least for me at one point, I was like, well, everyone's doing all of these things, so I need to do that to do fun. But then I realized like fun for me is like silly things. Like, I don't know, like right now there's been like a snowstorm, and like all of the it was first raining, and so I don't know, like if I might just be weird, but like I was like, I love being able to now as an adult walk outside, find some water that has been ice and jump on them, because
Yes.
then the ice cracks. I love it. I understand why kids love doing that, and I know exactly where to go where the kids haven't been before because I'm an adult, so I can go there by
And
myself.
if you're an adult who doesn't like breaking that thin ice, if you say that, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. Not a chance. I have to restrain myself when my kid finds it from like being like, no, no, that one's mine. Because let them have the fun. So yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. I don't
But
think it's weird at
but it's
all.
like those things that that you, because you're supposed, we grow up really fast. If you think about it, you're an adult from you're like, I don't know, like 25, some before, but let's do 25 till like you die. And that's a long time to be an adult and be responsible.
Yeah,
And so you need to have some of that childish fun, playfulness in your life. Like you can have that without being childish. Like that's two very different things.
absolutely. That sounds like joy to me. Just like I'm still caught up in breaking this ice. Um in my mind's eye, I'm like, oh man, we've had our fall spring almost every year around February. We get our fall spring, right?
Yeah.
And so the ice is all melted, and I can't play. And I haven't even been able to build my snow fort yet this year. But
Oh,
those things feed into all of the things that we do in our life and business.
yeah.
So, what would you say then is like one of, I'm going to call it a tip or a trick, I don't know, some of the insights that you have into incorporating fun, curiosity, playfulness into your day to day as a business owner in particular, um, that will help to establish, work the muscles, so to speak, of that resilient mindset?
It's a very loaded question.
I know. I'm
I was
always
like,
asking
ooh,
those
that's
questions.
like summarizing or last 30 minutes. Okay. I
And there's no
think
pressure, because this is a space, that's the whole point. And I want everybody to know that this is a space where there's no wrong answers. Your
no,
experiences are valid, and we are all in it together.
yes, no, I love the question. I think when we're building the muscle, it's important to start with one aspect of your life that you want to find more balance in first. So, like, if that's you finding, like, okay, I'm struggling with depression, like, maybe I'm going to do an example because that will be easier for me. So, when I struggled with depression, I would probably, I used to make I would choose to do something that would make me happy every day. And I would go out of my way to find those things. So, like, um figure out what that was, because that wouldn't be the same every single day. One day it could be like, okay, I would go and buy myself a cup of coffee, but another day maybe that would be sitting outside in the sunshine reading a book. Like, it could be very different things depending on what I felt like I needed to recharge. So I
Right.
think depending on what you need, figure out what would be something that would kind of create that feeling that you're missing or wanting, and then practice the listening muscle. Like, how we're talking about the squat would be like, how are you telling your brain how to bend down? Would be what are you telling your brain to go and do when you're feeling those things? So,
You're
like, if
forming a
you are,
habit. So
yeah,
we're
for me,
going, and this is something I love this, because this is, if you haven't read this, read Atomic Habits, all those listening,
yeah,
because it's a good place to start, because what you're describing, Anya, is that idea of that small thing. Now, we're not saying, oh, we know that going for a jog will make me feel better. Do not do that. That is way too big. You're gonna get. I mean, hey, listen. If you get out the door and you start jogging, awesome. Pat yourself on the back and throw yourself a party. But chances are, I know I wouldn't. Listen, I'd get my shoes on, walk out the door, and be like, "Well, that was fun," and and be done. But then I get to celebrate. So it's that
yeah,
little thing. It's the one thing, small. Don't make it hard for yourself.
yeah,
Something I saw online, and I think you'd appreciate this, Anya, is start looking for glimmers. And
yes,
to add an extra layer, and glimmers, by the way, glimmers are just the little things that when you look at something. I did this morning, um, when I saw my mug. So this is one of my favorite mugs. Life is a story. Make yours a bestseller. I have
oh,
more mugs than I know what to do with. But every time I see this one, I just go, oh, yeah, I'm going to make mine a bestseller, and I get all like, ugh, it's silly and
yeah,
it's little, but it made me happy. That's a glimmer. And so, like, it could be, when I was walking the kids to school, I noticed that one flower had all its petals still on somehow, despite the winter. Well, that's nice. Or so, I walk into my kids' room and my childhood stuffed animal is lying on their bed. Oh, that's sweet. Something like that. Very just little things. My husband brings me my coffee.
hmm,
Those are the glimmers. You can take it a step further. And I've seen a few people do this actually. They start taking pictures of their glimmers and they create a
yeah,
folder. And then you might go back to that folder and be like, I do not know why I took a picture of that worm on the ground, but I know that at one point in time, it brought me joy. And so then
yeah.
you can go back to that and remind yourself, wow, there are a lot of really special things in this world. And it trains your mind to look for it.
Yes. And I think that's like where you want to be, is like forming those micro habits and those neural pathways. And I think depending on like where you're at, it depends on how deep you want to go, right? So, like, there's a huge difference between like, I'm feeling a little blue today than
Right.
having clinical depression. Like, there's different levels of what support you would need in terms of those. But I think what you always can do is figuring out like, how can I take responsibility for my own well-being today? Like, what can I do for me to make my life better today? Like, if that's sometimes my mom used to have this saying when things were a little tough as a child. Like she would say, well, just go outside to the world for 5 minutes and come back, and you've experienced the world for today, like. And I thought that was really funny because it's like, well, you don't really see anything new, but it's just kind of a change of scenery or a change of something that shifts something.
Yeah.
And for some people, that's more than enough of what you're able to do. Maybe you just make it outside and you just go inside and you're outside for less than a second, and that's a win for you. But I
Yeah.
think that, like, that's the thing. Like,
And you're
that was
allowed to
your,
celebrate that.
yes.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's
I love
important
that.
to celebrate,
Like, even if your thing is you're lying there in bed and you can't get out of bed, it's one of those times. You can still look for glimmers there. I imagine, like, you look at your window and, oh, the sun peeked out.
Mhm.
Wow, that's great. You've done it. Celebrate, right?
Yes.
Oh, I look over at my bookshelf and I go, oh yeah, I own the entire Harry Potter series. That's pretty killer. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I can
I do that
celebrate that.
too.
Just at any little thing. You don't even need to leave your bed if it's not in the cards for you that day. I love
Yeah.
that. That's perfect. Now, I want to invite you, Anja, to share some final thoughts, because I know we tackled a lot of different topics today. But any final thoughts, cherry on top, something you'd like to leave everyone with at the end of this conversation?
Sure. So I think if there's anything that I would like you to take away is that even though, like, entrepreneurship can feel tough sometimes, I challenge you to find some small glimmers of where you can find some fun or some joy in that, in your day, to make it more balanced in the sense of how you want to build your life, because your life is way more important than what you do. You are more important than what you do. And so if you're in balance, the rest is going to fall into place. And the rest is not just going to fall into place, it's going to fall into place where you need it to fall into place. And if you trust that and you move in that, a lot of magical things, I believe, is going to happen. So I think that's like my final words. And if you ever want to connect with me, you connect with me on Instagram. I think it's down there, Anja Consults. And
Yeah,
if you
and
ever want,
it's in the
yes,
show notes too. You can find
perfect. And if you have any questions or you want to discuss anything that we've talked about today, feel free to connect with me and send me questions. I would love to chat with you more. And yeah, I'm just really grateful that you're here and that you're wanting to work on this with us, because I think that's something we were all working on constantly. It's not something that's new,
That's right.
So thank
That's
you.
right. I love it. And I mean, it's important to remember that we have a community around us. And I'm going to just like drop this one in there, is that Anja actually has a really great community. You're going to want to reach out to her to talk to her about that, because this community is going to support you in a very well-rounded way with your marketing, with your business, and with you as a person. So if you want to have a conversation about what that community looks like, and I suggest you do, reach out to Anja at Anja Consults over on Instagram. Send her a message. She's sweet as pie. Honest to goodness. You'll regret it if you don't reach out. Now, with that, remember that we have a lot of different conversations happening over the course of this week, and I want you to make sure you don't miss any of them. Because if you miss one, look at what you would have missed. You don't want to do that. So follow, like, subscribe. Make sure you get the notifications that tell you what's coming up next, because you do not want to miss it. With that, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Make sure you look for the good. That's a Jason Mraz one, but that's all right. We're hitting all the good, happy feeling songs. See you later, everyone.